I want to move now to a game I like to call Choose Between Two. So, Jason, I'm going to give you two choices. You're going to explain. You're going to choose one. You're going to explain which one, why you chose one over the other. Are you ready to play?
Yeah, absolutely, sure.
All right. First one: cryptids or ghosts? Which of the two kind of lights your fire more when it comes to like paranormal investigations?
Ghosts, I would say. Although I find cryptids very fascinating, obviously, but ghosts, I think, tie into that whole concept of what happens when we die, which I think is something that's
Hmm.
on everybody's mind, especially as you get older. And I know now that I'm in my 50s, it's becoming more and more on the forefront of my brain. And I know having done investigations, like especially as an investigator, investigating hauntings is just easier than cryptids.
Mhm.
You only need your usual equipment that we go into a location that's supposed to be haunted, and we can start, doing EVP sessions, spirit box, Gansfield experiments, whatever. To go looking for a cryptid like Bigfoot, you're going into the woods. There's a lot more involved that way. You're looking for like an Ogopogo or a lake monster. You got to get a boat. You need side scan and
Mhm.
sonar. It just becomes so much more of a daunting task. Um, Whereas from my experience, like ghosts can be anywhere. They could be in the rooms we're in right now. We just don't know about it. So I think it's just one, they're easier to investigate. Two, it ties into the whole question of what happens after we die, or you could get into like multi-dimensional, you know, timelines, etc. as well. So I just think it's a very fascinating subject matter, and it's been, people have been wondering about ghosts since the dawn of our society, mankind kind of thing, humankind. There's been stories of ghosts and paranormal activity. So that definitely ghosts would be the number one for me.
The next one is a choice between two James Wan movies, deals with hauntings, deals with paranormal investigators investigating these hauntings. One is The Conjuring, the other is Insidious. Which of the two really kind of like did you enjoy more between the two movies as both a film fan and then like a paranormal investigator as well?
I would say The Conjuring. I like both of them. Like that's a tough call because they're both, I think, really solid horror movies. Um, they're very different too, actually. That's one thing I always like about James Wan, right? Like he's kind of really good. Like he's got his thing that he does is very similar style, but they're two kind of very different movies. I really
Mm,
like The Conjuring. As a period piece. I think that's just it's not something you see much in horror anymore. And of course, Ed and Lorraine Warren are people who are real paranormal investigators. They're pioneers in the field. Now, whether or not you would think they're a bunch of shyster artists or not is irrelevant. I think the way that Wan and his screenwriters depicted the investigation in that movie, they were pretty bang on accurate to what investigations are like.
mm.
Of course, they played around with the true story aspect. There's stuff that went on in that didn't go on in the real case, which is just a completely different thing, anyways. But I thought it was a really good exploration of a paranormal investigation. That I mean, it got a little Hollywood-esque at times, but for the most part, it was pretty grounded. It was really scary too. I remember watching that with a crowd, and they were sure people were just jumping in their seats and screaming, and it was a lot of fun to watch. And I really like Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga's their portrayal as the Warrens was really really good. Um, yeah, so it's just a solid movie, and as someone who likes ghost hunting and paranormal investigations, I thought it did a really good job of showing the investigative side of things.
We both love John Carpenter. I still think like I think as time has moved on, like the legacy of his work has just become stronger. Really has. I think like his work is just so good. It still looks great now. It still works. Still scary. He has this. I guess you could call like an unofficial trilogy of films called the Apocalypse trilogy, right? And you have The Thing, Prince of Darkness, In the Mouth of Madness, sort of three. Now everyone loves The Thing. We all love The Thing. I love all of these three movies. But if you had to choose between Prince of Darkness or In the Mouth of Madness, which of those two movies do you reckon will come second in the pecking order of that trilogy for you?
I think it would be Prince of Darkness. Um, I've rewatched it recently, so it's pressure in my brain. I thought like In the Mouth of Madness, I thought was really good, but I think Prince of Darkness is a tighter film for me. It's a lot more, the fact it's kind of one location, and I thought he had a really good cast in that one. He had a good cast. He's really good actually at casting his movies, but
Hmm.
there's something about that movie that I think just that works. Maybe because it's dealing with like religion and spirituality, and he plays with time a bit at the end. Yeah, I just think it's just a really solid film. I like that Donald Pleasance is in it.
Mm,
Um, Victor Wong, two people that he'd use very regularly. I mean, he did that one, I think, after Big Trouble in Little China, because Victor Wong and Dennis Dugan were
yeah,
both in that, and then he brought them in there.
yeah.
So it's cool to see that. It was neat to see Parker Stevenson, from Simon and Simon, which was a show I watched religiously as a kid growing up. In that movie, Lisa Blount. I just thought it was just a really good horror movie with a lot of really big ideas that they touch upon, and I like to see horror movies that do that. Um, Whereas like In the Mouth of Madness, I think is neat and it deals with writing, but I just thought for me, just some of that movie just kind of goes off the rails as it goes along. And it felt like he just kept things way more together in Prince of Darkness.
And as a composer, I think Prince of Darkness just might be my favorite soundtrack of what John Carpenter did there as well. It's really great, kind of foreboding, pulsating kind of like a score to that movie as well, which I'm
Yeah.
really a big fan of.
Yeah.
I might know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Practical effects or CGI? So you watch the movie, one of them pops up. Which would you rather see?
Oh, practical effects. Like
Yeah,
night
yeah,
and day. I just, like there's some really good like computer effects out there. There really is.
yeah,
But you're always aware that it's computer effects. Like there is. Whereas like if you watch The Thing, it was all done in camera practically, and it just works so well. And that's one of the reasons why The Thing that came out in 2011 just sucked. Like you just knew that they were just, yeah, it just doesn't work. It just
yeah.
doesn't work for me. Alien Romulus was great because Fede Alvarez took it back to the basics. Most of those effects were done, in camera practically, and I thought that was really neat. This just feels more real. Like there's more at stake there. We're more engaged with practical effects.
And I think like when I watched Beetlejuice, for a long time I was turned off by a lot of Tim Burton stuff over the last 10 years or so because he's written really heavy with the CGI kind of stuff. And the cool thing about a lot of his early movies, especially his peak like 80s to like the late 90s, was there was a lot of kind of like practical effects thing there. And Beetlejuice, of course, being a big one of that. And then to see in that sequel that he brought back a lot of kind of like creature feature makeup and practical stuff as well. Of course, there's some VFX in it could kind of like polish the edges, but it was great to see that. And I think for a lot of people who maybe might that might be their kind of like their first Tim Burton experience, it was really cool for people to be reintroduced to that kind of filmmaking and effects. And like you said, it's just you know I forgot who was talking about this with when sometimes when you watch genre films and you have practical effects, sure, it might seem dated maybe 10 years later or so, but it feels more tangible, it feels more real, and you can kind of you could still kind of hold on to that and buy into it. Where if you watch like an outdated CGI, it takes you right out of it. It really does. It's kind of like listening to a really polished album and then the guitar solo comes up and it's done like through an 8 track and it's really scuzzy and it just doesn't work. It just stands out, just it's like you can just tell that it was made for that time because of the tools that they had at their disposal when it comes to like digital technology. Where with practical stuff like this, I still think like the best stuff they've ever done is back in the 80s, like Rob Bowden and Stan Wilson and all those guys. It still looks great. Like I think I was saying to a previous guest, I rather watch Pumpkinhead a million times as compared to like the Mummy Returns with the Scorpion King and that kind of wacky stuff there.
Same. And I remember showing because obviously I've been introducing my son to all these movies that I grew up with, and I remember showing him like Raiders of the Lost Ark, and we were watching, like a great sequence, of course, where Indy is on the horse and he goes after the convoy, and he's
Mm,
going on there, and you could, he's knocking people down, and he's getting pulled underneath the truck, and my son's like, "Dad, that's all real." And I said, "Yeah, like they
yeah.
didn't fake any of that. Like that's even when the guy gets run over, they time it perfectly, And I'm just like that, and he was so much more engaged with it as well. You can't beat it. Jaws still the scene where Brody's chumming and come and chum this shit, and the shark comes up, even though it's not real, man. That was really there, and he was reacting to something that was there. It still has an impact. What was that? It's 1975,
Yeah.
like almost 50 years ago. 49
Yeah.
years old. And that movie still works because it was all real.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and people can say, "Oh, doesn't the shark you know, it doesn't look as real as say compared to, I don't know, like the Meg that's come out like recently. But I take Bruce the shark over, you know, like anything else that's out these days, because like you said, it's you feel the weight of it, you know. And I think sometimes a lot of time when it comes to visual effects, the weight's not there, and it's something that's really missing.
Agreed.
Last one. So you're at the cinema. It's one of the few times you're going to go. You're going to sit down. What are you going to munch on? Have you got popcorn or candy? What's your going to go to cinema food?
Oh, popcorn. Well, every time.
Popcorn.
Yeah. Yeah. I love movie theater popcorn. Like, it's hands down. And it tends to sit better than most candies do with me nowadays. So yeah, popcorn for the win.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content.